In case you missed it, LUMIX just announced a couple of new products, and one of which we'll talk about here today, which is the LUMIX S1 Mark II. Now, to give my thoughts on this camera and to not make this an incredibly long video, because there's a ton that this camera offers, I'm going to give you kind of my standout features for the S1 Mark II. I keep on wanting to say S1R Mark II, but the S1 Mark II, but I do want to also get the disclaimer out of the way that LUMIX did send me on a trip to Austin, Texas to review and see this camera, but they're not asking me to say anything specifically, and so you're gonna get my full and honest opinion. Yes, it's an honest opinion. So with that, let's get into one of the first standout features of this camera, starting first with a 24 megapixel partially stacked sensor. That was a mouthful. But basically, that's going to give us really good rolling shutter performance, which is apparently the bane of everyone's existence now on the internet. And so it's really cool to see this 24 megapixel partially stacked sensor in the new S1 Mark II. Now, one thing that's really impressive about this new sensor is the dynamic range and low light performance. We now have a camera that has really good low light performance, has a dual native ISO, and a dynamic range boost. The native ISO on this camera is 640 and 5000 ISO. I've really missed that higher ISO performance that we've seen with other LUMIX dual native ISO cameras, and I'm really liking the fact that it's in the S1 Mark II.
So here's my thing. I love this like cinescope thing.
Shut your mouth.
No, you can focus.
Shut your mouth. Something else that's been improved is the open gate options. You now have a high frame rate option in open gate. It is a 5.1 open gate, but you do now have up to 60 frames per second, as well as if you're recording externally, you now have the option to record RAW in open gate. Now, talking about high frame rates, one thing that's really cool with this camera, and I used it a bunch, or at least as much as I could, is the option for 240 frames per second in 1080p. This is something that we saw with like the EVO 1 and maybe some other LUMIX cameras, but this is a high quality 1080p, a very usable 1080p, and just creates that stunning slow motion option. And so the fact that you can get that in this camera with this improved sensor is just, in my opinion, one of the truly standout features of this camera. It does lose the autofocus performance. You can do single shot autofocus. That 240 frames per second is a really cool feature coming out of the S1 Mark II. Now, talking about RAW recording, just like we've seen with the GH7, the S1R Mark II, the S1 Mark II also has the ability to film in ProRes RAW in the camera. Now, this is something that I don't use as much as I thought I was going to, especially with the GH7, but it is really nice to have ProRes RAW and maybe convert it to a Cinema DNG using some conversion software for DaVinci Resolve users. And so it's really nice to have that option if I do need to record RAW. Now, if you're like me and you like to use Cinema 4K on your previous LUMIX cameras, something that has been delivered with the S1 Mark II is the traditional cinescope aspect ratio or CinemaScope aspect ratio. You now have a 2:4:1 aspect ratio. I'm actually filming in it right now, and the concert that I filmed and a lot of the content I filmed in Austin was with that CinemaScope aspect ratio. And so it is really cool to have that if you're trying to use especially spherical lenses and give that more anamorphic look. Basically, it uses the full width of the sensor and kind of just crops the top and bottom, giving you that traditional CinemaScope look and feel. Not to mention, if you are a social media content creator, you may notice I'm filling up the entire width of your phone right now, and that is because I'm delivering this in CinemaScope. Now, something that is going to come with a later firmware, and I think is probably one of the most, I don't like using the word game-changing features, but really and truthfully, it changes a lot of things for filmmakers, is that in a future firmware update, this camera is going to have RAW C3. This kind of opens up the conversation of, if you are ultimately shooting with an RE camera, you can really use a LUMIX camera as your entry-level point, or as a crash cam, as a, you know, run and gun camera. And it really opens up the conversation of growth patterns with Lumix users. You know, a lot of times, because we don't come out with cinema cameras as Panasonic or Lumix, you know, as of recently, the question becomes is, what's my growth pattern? With Sony, you have a growth pattern. You have the Burano, you have the Fx3, Fx3, you have the Venice. You have a growth pattern as far as cinema cameras. Even now with Nikon, you have red cinema cameras. With having ARRI Log C3 and ARRI Color Science in these cameras, the growth pattern becomes an ARRI camera. And so that is something that is really making Lumix super appealing, especially now with their full frame cameras. And so I'm really excited for that firmware update. I'm spitting, like, that's how excited I am. Now, the next standout feature is just the price of this camera. This camera at launch is going to be $31.99. That is cheaper than a 4-year-old Fx3, and so you're getting a much better camera, in my opinion, than the Fx3. I really do think this sets up the Fx3 Mark II to have to really deliver. I think if Sony plays their cards just a little bit wrong on the Fx3 Mark II, I really do think that the S1 Mark II can unseat the Fx3 line as that mirrorless style, that run and gun, small form factor cinema camera. The S1 Mark II is a beast for photo, for video, for filmmaking, everything. It offers such good features for working professionals. I think this, in my opinion, along with the S1R Mark II, are cameras to beat in 2025. So if you are someone that is a working professional and you're wanting that tool to pretty much do all that you need, photo, video, stellar at both of those things, then I would definitely check out the LUMIX S1 Mark II. And so that's it for me. Now, I kind of chose all of my favorite features of this camera, but there's plenty more that these cameras offer. If you do have any questions about the S1 Mark II, let me know in the comments below, or reach out to me on Instagram and we could start a conversation there. But as always, thank you for joining. Go and find your journey. Go embrace life. Peace.